So my name is Dmitri, I work in Poland, and here I represent TransparenCEE network, which is a network of civic tech activists, and it's like a very broad term. It's mainly people who work in civil society, organization, and in technology, but as you can see, there are like many areas that it covers. Mostly we describe it as people who are working in tech for social good. And basically, there are a lot of organizations like this. In our network is 25 countries with almost 100 projects. So basically, we work on many areas to enable these organizations to do things better. And today I'm going to talk about like the last two pillars that we work in, which is developing IT tools and partially research about it. So I come not from IT sector, I come from journalism and civil society organizations. So very often when I work on IT tools, this is how I feel. Because basically it is very, very difficult to understand how they should work and to get the expertise. And I want just to ask, like, how many people from here are from civil society organization or from civic sector? Right, okay, so quite a lot. And is there anyone who worked on developing IT tools in your organization? So, all right, I know you. So very, very few. I mean, for those who did that, probably you would agree with me that it's hard even for Rock Dwayne Johnson, who is like a very tough guy. And at the same time, we realize that if we don't do that, we kind of be left behind. So we have to jump on this bandwagon and improve ourselves in order to benefit the people we work for. At the same time, if you can see generally, like globally and in this region that we are in, that a lot of tech tools, unfortunately, either don't have a really strong impact. Some of them are abandoned after they're developed, and some of them like stop working properly in some time. And so we're seeing this constantly, and we kind of ask ourselves, so why is it happening? And we talk with people from our network, try to understand what they think is the reason, and we made the research about it, and you can read it more in detail on our website. But at the same time, many CSO activists didn't really want to go public about it, and they told us in private, but they didn't want us to write that their project didn't work out. And this is one of the main reasons, because that would influence their ability to further fundraise and get money from donors, to develop something in the future. And I think this is like the first lesson learned, is that the current system of project-based grants for civic tech doesn't really work well and creates a lot of constraints which keeps the civil society organization from success. At the same time, there's no real alternative to this model, and the organizations are used to work in this environment, they know how to apply to grants, and they know how to work in it, and it's like the major source of their income. So the main limitations that prevent them from succeeding are few. So one of the most obvious one is like that the budgets of civil society organizations don't really match the expectation of IT developers in the business sector. There's generally a perception that civil society organizations should be poor, otherwise they won't do their job well. And unfortunately with civic technology it doesn't work, because if you don't have a lot of money, what would you do? You would hire someone who either works very slow, like a slowpoke, or who works not very good as you would want to, or who's not very reliable, who would have 10 other projects and yours would be the last priority. And so one of the solutions is that we just find some friends who work in IT sector and ask them to do it, or we find some person who's really moved by our cause and ask them to help in kind or do it cheaper, which is giving you some safety net, but not really. And one of the examples that I like is that we had a project developed by a guy we worked for years with, and in the middle of development he decided to just drop everything he's doing and to move into Sweden to become a rocket scientist. And basically, we couldn't do anything about it. We had to find someone really fast in a very short time. Unfortunately, the person wasn't as good and the time was limited, and this is kind of the second thing that keeps people from creating something really successful and impactful, is that usually you work in a very rigid time frame when it's like a project-based donor requirements, and you don't have like a lot of room to work longer in case you realize, you know, okay, this tool is more difficult than we expected, we should do it like a little bit longer. No, if the time's out, you're out. Secondly, it's flexibility. So this guy obviously doesn't work in CSO. He has a lot of flexibility, and CSO don't, because whatever they write in the proposal, they have to deliver. There's like very little room for adoption or changing things, and basically kind of breaks this cycle, which is like kind of standard development cycle where you design, then you test, and you adopt. So on the adoption part, it kind of cuts down. And very important is sustainability. So this picture, like I think, really represents very well the sustainability of civic tech projects. Like basically people do stuff, but not a lot of think about how things will run when the money will run out. Or if they do, it means that they already had some projects that like didn't work out in the past, so they can learn from these mistakes. Very good example is the Bosnian project Javna Rasprava, which is connecting the MPs together with the citizens to discuss the future legislation. So it's amazing, it runs for like several years, and I know that they refused a couple of grants just because they didn't have the funds for maintenance, because they knew that you need time for this to develop. And before that, they had some projects that had to go to abyss because no one had funds to run them, to maintain them. And no one thinks about maintenance too much, because generally you can see the work of CSOs as this assembly line, where you create one thing, you deliver it, you forget about it, and then you move to another thing. Because if you want to keep your job, if you want to keep existing, you need to run projects like constantly, without any stop and thinking about the past. And at the same time, donors also don't really think about the past. If you like fulfill their KPIs, they're okay, and you can just move on to the next thing. So basically, in the end, instead of like a functioning ecosystem, you have a lot of projects that were like developed on the initial stage, but didn't go further, and it's like a pile of unfinished things. You can imagine it like that. At the same time, you can say that like, oh yeah, well, it's not our fault. It's all like donors' fault. Now, of course, civil society organizations also have a lot of limitations, and the main one is, of course, the lack of internal expertise, because very few people understand like technology, and often when you want to start something, you kind of move in the dark, trying to get to some idea or to some solution, but at the same time that kind of influence your ability to assess the risk properly, because like you just don't know what the risks are really in the development. And very rarely someone is doing the proper assessment of needs and like the community they want to create the application for. So what I mean is that you're going really and talk with the end users, trying to get the idea what they need, trying to create like something that would fit their needs, like test with them at the development stage. Usually it's like kind of based on some assumptions that we like think that it will be useful, but we really like don't have the good scientific proof for that. And also, I think that like many NGOs, like because they're desperate for money, they tend to say yes to opportunities, even if they are like not really up to it, and they're kind of very positive about it, but at the same time overestimate their capacities. They think that it's like doable, then it turns out it's like 2 times harder than they imagined. One of the examples is a project actually we supported in Georgia, which seemed like an easy one because it's like a public budgets monitoring tool for municipalities, and we had a very strong partner there to implement it. However, the partner was not very knowledgeable about the state of open data, and it turns out that the open data in Georgia is like very difficult to get and then to compare as well. So unfortunately, it didn't have like a very good impact in the end. Another thing, of course, is that like because people are so overworked and there's so many things to finish, like communication and promotion is very often left out of the equation, and because of that, people think that if you have a really good tech, it means that it will go viral just because it's a good technology. Practice show it doesn't work like this. You need to go directly to the communities, explain them how technology works, and explain them what is the value of this technology. Last but not least is that there's always a sense of competition for funds, for grants, and that creates, in a way, very often like overlapping solutions. So, for example, NGOs don't like communicate between each other too much and share what they're doing, and that's a loss of time and effort. Whereas they could like work together, maybe like share resources, but that doesn't happen often. And one example is a tool from Hungary that we wanted to replicate in Poland. And when we were in the middle of development, we realized that another organization from Poland launched almost similar tool that had a bigger scale and that was kind of like a bit better than ours. And but at the same time, when we talked with them about their plans, they never like shared what they're doing, what is going to be the scope of it. So they kept it like sort of secret, and then just bam, it was out. So we decided like not to launch it because it didn't make sense. So what we should do about that? I mean, the answers are kind of coming from the issues. So donors, community first need to recognize that there's an issue with how the civic tech projects are supported. You cannot make something good and cheap. There should be more flexibility in time, details, and delivery. You need to focus on impact, not on KPIs and performance. And the development cycle is a cycle, so there should be like more space for experimenting, improvement, mistakes. And yeah, the maintenance is very important, so sometimes more important than innovation or making up something new. And at the same time, the civic tech community should be more open and share more information, so there would be overlaps, do better assessments of needs, so there would be not unnecessary tools, and invest in communication and promotion to get more visibility. Better assess their capacity and really like be more critical towards what they're doing, and kind of abandon the success culture when you always like just talk about how awesome everything is, but you don't kind of mention what was not awesome. So I think this is my last slide. Yes, that's true. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
The information was very condensed. This leaves us with a couple of minutes of questions, if you guys have.
I can try to speak.
Or we have a microphone.
Okay.
Hi.
So, thank you. As a person who has been working with civil society for most of my adult life, I will relate to the last part, maintenance over innovation. The thing with maintenance is very much linked with sustainability, a very nice word, but then all projects have an end, and all projects are designed to be non-profit. Actually, it is kind of a requirement for both institutions and foundations not to have that. So what would be the solution in the end?
Well, I think that it depends like really on specific project, but if you have a successful solution that is already working, it doesn't mean that you have to reinvent it again, and this is what often is happening. At the same time, the issue is that you can always develop and improve what you have already to work better, but it's very difficult to get like funds for that. It's easier to say, okay, let's do something entirely new, and in the end, if you look at it, you kind of invested all of your time and all of your money, and you develop this really nice thing, but then you just kind of like, you just abandon it because there's no one to take care of it, and then it just, very often, I mean like, there are projects that can be automated on a like certain degree, but still you need like people to pay them salaries to, for example, work on providing data, on providing content, on communicating with the community, and so on and so forth. So it needs like a better sustainability model, because otherwise it just doesn't work.
There was another question. Okay.
What's your experience with hackathons? And did you have experience that you actually launched the project and then passed it to the state institution, so it became like a national, state resource?
Yeah, so I think that like currently in Central Eastern Europe, the situation is not very friendly, as you might know. So far, I think that very few governments would gladly support like watchdog organization. The trend is the opposite, that they would like try to do everything for them not to be able to function properly. At the same time, in the states that we work with, where the government is open, sometimes it's very difficult to kind of explain the value to them, and I think this is like one of the main challenges to level this knowledge gap that exists. Because when you come to people in like local administration somewhere, like let's say in Nikolaev, where you're from, and you say to them the word hackathon, they're like having this big eyes and they're like, what are you talking about? Come on, like, well, what do you want from us? Like, we understand training, okay, but like, what data? Like, what are you talking about? Like, they're really lost. So like, to get support is very difficult if you don't really like talk the same language. So I think in this region, this is like the main challenge, to bring people up to speed with what we're doing, and then you probably would get like their understanding and their support and their acceptance. So yeah.
And the last question.
Thank you for the presentation. It's really amazing. But could you please name, how do you think, what is the most successful tool was ever made for civil society? Facebook.
No. I mean, like, there are plenty of successful tools for civil society developed in different countries.
One.
Okay, this like platform that I showed you is one. For example, in Croatia, there's a very good fact-checking platform, which is implemented by an organization called Gong. I don't know if you know about it. So basically, they're very known, and they work like on the intersection of government and watchdogs and journalism. But the thing is that they are really like funding their work from different sources, and they are working for several years. So basically, that allowed them to have time to kind of get the ball rolling and really gather their attention and kind of grow their community and influence. So for example, one of their successes is like there are laws that in the parliament that because of their investigation kind of was pulled back because they didn't kind of cover the reality.
Cool. For sure, I've seen more hands. I strongly recommend you guys to interact during the break. We're going to have now the last session before lunch. So thank you very much, Dmitri.